Welcome to Ladies Who Lead podcast.
I am Dr. Lindsey Tavakolian. I'm a plastic surgeon and I practice in Dallas, Texas.
And I'm Mary Catherine Thampi. I am the founder and personal stylist of Mary Monarch. Our mission is to bring women together in a supportive network for help with business, entrepreneurship, relationships, and more.
You are listening to Ladies Who Lead podcast, where we will share real conversations with real women who inspire us.
Our guest today is Suzanne Banker, owner of Free Flow Yoga Fitness Studio in Franklin, Tennessee. In this episode, Suzanne shares how she transitioned from a stay-at-home mom of 4 to a thriving fitness entrepreneur. She is bold in her transparency and shares her family's journey through grief following the loss of her brother last year. We cried and we laughed and she filled our hearts. Don't miss this powerful episode as we share Suzanne's story and the strength that she brings to it. We hope you enjoy this conversation. You are listening to Ladies Who Lead podcast.
Yes, my name is Suzanne Banker and we live just outside of Nashville. So we're in Franklin, Tennessee. I own Free Flow Yoga and Bounce. We have 4 kids. We actually have a senior this year, which is crazy. So we're moving her to college next week. So that's a big step.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. It's like it goes so slow and then it goes so fast. So that's just the reality. But yeah, 4 kids.
And tell us how old you are.
I'm 40.
Looking at you, it's hard to believe that you have a senior.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's funny because I don't really think anything of it, but then I'll go to like these events at the high school and I'm like, these people are old people. Like I mean, it's fine. It's just whatever your story is. But I think my kids didn't realize it until they were in Spanish in high school and they had to say how old their parent was in Spanish. And my daughter was like, you were literally the only person that I said 30 something. And so I think that's when they were like, this isn't normal, So, but it's fun. I'm glad we had kids young, even though there's sacrifices that come with that. You're going to miss things either way, and it's going to be a blessing either way. And so for us, I think kids take a lot of energy, and to have a big family, I'm glad we did it young. So anyway.
Yeah. I can definitely see that. And like you said, there's going to be good and bad with everything. And I just see so much beauty in you being your age now and already having your family. It's very cool. What fascinates me though, and what I'm really curious about is how did you become a business owner while already having your family like fully underway? It's not like you started your businesses and then like had a family and, spaced it all out. So tell us a little bit about when you started your family and then when you started getting into fitness and then moving into starting a career and a business in fitness.
Yeah. So I know for me, like my interest in fitness started even as a kid. I remember I wasn't the skinniest child. And so I remember loving to move, but also having this issue of like, I don't feel like I love my body. And so that was something I remember wrestling with as a child. And I remember the day we had like races. We lived at the end of a dirt road and all the neighbor kids came out and we had these relay races. And there's this one girl in her sports bra and her cute little bike shorts. And I just remember looking at her abs and I was like, girl, I want that so bad. And I was just impressed with her athleticism and her endurance. And I was like, how do I get there? And so it intrigued me even as a kid. And then when I was like 15, 16, I ordered like the Firm fitness system off of an infomercial and I made my sisters do it with me. And so I was so interested in it. It was just always like, I love this. I love the burn. I love the challenge. I love what it does for me mentally. And something came alive when I was moving. And so that was something that started there. And so I just, from a teenager on, it was just part of my daily habits. I did most of my fitness stuff just at home, things I found online, YouTube, whatever.
I think that's what most of us did back in the day, right?
Yeah. I mean, nobody went to gyms unless you were somebody really important and famous. So that's just at least what I thought. But I got married and within a year we got pregnant with our first. And
how old were you when you got married?
I was 20 when I got married. My husband was almost 28. So he's a lot older than me. So he was the adult in the room and I was just along for the ride. I was learning as I was going. And so, yes, we had our first I just turned 22 when we had Gabrielle. And then pretty much every 2 years we had a kid. Cause I was like, if we're going to have a big family and we want to do this, I don't want to be like, 60 and have
Right.
a kid in college and then have a baby in diapers. I'm not doing that. So
Mhm.
we're just going to do it and be done. So I spent my 20s having babies and it's such a blur. I don't really remember much of it at all. It was exhausting. It was probably one of the hardest seasons of my life. I'm not a baby mom and I love babies, but I was exhausted. Like I felt like I was 90 years old every day. It just took a lot out of me and being a stay-at-home mom because we spent most of those years we moved to Nashville when we had the two girls and we didn't have family in town. We didn't have anyone around to help except for the community we built of moms and other people that we kind of helped each other out. But I was just stay-at-home mom while David was building his business because he does construction and real estate. So that was probably one of the hardest seasons of my life. And for my mental sanity, I needed something to challenge me and like keep me in, in the game.
Yeah.
It was just diapers and Cheerios and meltdowns and so I always had some sort of side hustle. Like I always had something that I was doing. I was part of different little business ventures. I always had something going that just kept that part of me alive because I just quickly discovered that's how I'm wired. And I think as women, there's a lot of shame in the way you're wired. Like, oh, if you're better, if you have this, flaming career, or if you're totally a homeschool mom or whatever those stigmas we create. And it's like, we're all made so different. And like just
Mhm.
acknowledging that, I was like, I'm not cut out to homeschool. So we let that go. And I was like, I love my children, but I'm much nicer when I'm not teaching them math. So I'm not going to do that. And I'm the best version of me when I have something that I am challenging myself in, I'm making money at, contributing to the bottom line. And so that's kind of where the business side of me came in. So I was like, learning and growing. And at some point along the way, my youngest Isley was 1. And we were home one Christmas and a friend of mine who was a blogger back when that was a thing. She had connections with a lady that had a whole online portal, did like stuff and trainings and local studios. And she said, hey, this girl is looking for postpartum women to help film, a fitness video or whatever. And I was like, well,
Oh,
I'm very
neat.
postpartum. I think Isley was like 3 or 4 months. And I was like, I'm so curious about this industry. And so I just want to meet her. I've done some of her workouts. They were and I was like, I'll just volunteer and see what happens. Like the worst thing that happens is I make a total fool of myself and I never have to watch the video.
Right.
So I just was like, yes, I'll come. You can use me. So I showed up and she's just like, let's film, let's roll. And I was like, okay, I've literally never done this. So I'm just like crunching and smiling.
That's a very vulnerable place to be too, I
It
feel,
really
like
was. I spent the whole
postpartum.
night before trying to figure out what to wear because, you're just not the best version of yourself postpartum. But I had really worked out through that pregnancy. So I was like, I'm doing all right, but I'm going to be authentic here. Maybe other moms will relate to this. But we filmed it in one cut and then she was like, that was amazing. And I was like, I really love fitness and that was fun. And she goes, you should teach. And I was like, oh, that has always been a dream of mine to be the lady at the rec center with the boom mic up on the stage. And that sounds so fun. And so at the time it was just like it made me come alive. And that's usually what I look for with anything business related. Like that's the starting point is it's like if you feel alive doing it, like you should look into that because there's something there that you already have
Yeah.
inside of you.
One of my mentors used to say, if it puts a fire in your belly, then you're headed in the right direction.
Exactly. Yes. And so that's at the time I was like, even if it's just a hobby and to help me stay sane during this time, like I'll do it. So I got certified. And I started teaching this little studio of Music Row in Nashville. I would wake up at 3:30. I would in the morning. I would nurse Isley. I would be done by 4:30, leave my house by 5, drive 45 minutes to the studio off Music Row, and I would teach a double class and be home by 7:30 when David had to leave for work. And I did that
Wow.
3 mornings a week, and I am
Wow.
not a morning person. So that is how much I loved it. And
That's passion.
that was, I mean, even looking back, I don't think I could do that now. But what I loved about it, I loved the movement and I loved the playlists and I just loved all of that. But it was right across the street from Belmont University, and a lot of the students would come over, and that was their time to themselves before their day got rolling. And the conversations we would have afterwards, and just the human connection, and just a lot of them being like, I became like their little young mentor mom, that just to talk through life stuff with them. And that's really what I realized I loved about fitness and community, was just the relationships, the people, the stuff you go through in life together. And that's what would wake me up even more than the movement. So that's how I got started teaching. And yeah,
that resonates so hard, because I think Mary Catherine and I both, gyms have really carried us during hard times. And throughout my entire adult life, I've always found my support system, my community, the people I relied on, my best friends in the gym.
Yeah.
That's where I met them all.
Yeah.
It's a very special place and it's a very special, almost like sacred place where everybody's coming to better yourself. And so you have that mindset, but you're also showing up as a real person every day.
Yes.
You know? You come with your
There's
troubles, but
something
you're there
really
with one
sacred
mindset.
about movement. And one thing I've seen, you don't work out and you push and you're lying on the mat at the end. And I've just seen it time and time again. It's like this euphoric release. When people cry, they just finally breathe. They let out all that they've been holding in. And I mean, we've walked through so many things as a studio, like, cancer, divorce, loss of a child. It's really become the support group for women that just didn't have a home. And that's actually the fuel. That is the reason why I decided to get going on the business venture of it, because I was teaching for a while and I was like, I love this so much. What if I had this like in my hometown? What if it was just down the street from me? What if I was the lady in charge? Like, what was it like? And I didn't know anything about it, but I was like, I'm going to figure it out. And so I went to my husband and I said, hey, I have an idea. And I was like, I want to open a studio. I've run the numbers. I've done the research. I know I can pay my bills. Like, I know enough to know that I can break even. And I really want to open it almost as like a community center, as like an outreach to my community, because at the time of being a stay-at-home mom, I would only know the women that I would meet at the park, or from church, or have someone intentional. I was like, I'm not going to know the people in my community if I don't make an effort. And how are they going to know other people? What if they're in the same boat as me? And so I was basically like, what if we just had this place where we all work out, we high five each other, we cry together, I pay my bills. It's this thing that brings me life and maybe brings life to other people. And that was like my initial thinking, as I was just kind of going to start a ministry, almost like a nonprofit. And surprisingly, my husband, who is just way smarter than me, and he, of course, he had to run all the numbers too, because he didn't trust my numbers. And so for valid reasons.
He also had some experience being an entrepreneur. Is that right? Like running his business?
Yeah. Oh, yes. David is always like, he's been an entrepreneur since he was like a teenager. So we are very yin and yang with our gifts and abilities. And so I was like, you look at all the legal stuff and make sure that this is a go. So it was really, we've been a great team along the way with all of our business ventures, but he said yes. We were in full vulnerability at that time. Our marriage was really struggling. And I think as I've talked to more people, lots of people go through phases when they're just like, this is really hard. Marriage is hard. And you add kids to the mix, you add businesses to the mix. We were also in a lawsuit with some stuff related to a business venture he was in, where
if you're in business, you're in a lawsuit too. I think that's just how it goes.
Right. And that's happened a few times, and that's just the nature of it. And so, you're taking risks as an entrepreneur. They're calculated risks, but you have to be a specific person that's like willing to take that on. And the highs are really high and the lows are really low. And So yeah, there was a lot happening. We were in a pressure cooker. Looking back now, I have so much compassion on those kids that were just beating it out. And I really don't think it was so much about the marriage. It was just us undoing some trauma, undoing stuff that had built up over the years, ways we didn't know how to communicate, ways we didn't know ourselves. And
Mhm.
so it was a really hard season. And I remember sitting on the steps at our house and just saying, hey, I really feel like in this season, I need to do this. This is like, I need to do this for me. I need to do this for my future. I need to do that. I feel like there's things I'm going to learn about myself along the way. And I feel like you have a path you need to go on. We're both in counseling. Let's work on ourselves and then see how things land because something's got to give. And it was a huge turning point in not only our marriage but our lives. And I think that was the first time we like separated in such a healthy way to be like, okay, you do you, you do you. I'm
Mhm.
cheering you on. I'm here for you, but we got to do the work, and nobody can do that for us.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and-
you have to work on yourself before you
yeah.
can work on your marriage too. Or I mean at the same time too, but
Oh,
if
100%.
if you're not who you need to be or where you need to be, everything is going to suffer. I mean, I think that's just common sense, but I think we all feel it.
Yeah, it's so true, and there's so much I could say there, but that's a different podcast. But anyway, we we kind of got rolling on that, and as we were a team in that, and I found there's this up and coming area in Franklin, and it was booming, and I was like, that's where I want to be. It's growing. It's going to be the next, Cool Springs. We've got to be in this area, and I I was like working through that and thinking through that and starting to pursue that. At the same time, I had heard wind of the studio that was affiliated with the lady I had originally gotten trained with, about 20 minutes outside of my house. And I just had mutual connections. And one day I'm doing dishes and I literally felt like almost audibly God say to me, go call her, just go call her. And I was like, I don't know her. Like, and so I couldn't let it go. And I was like, so annoyed, picked up the phone. I got her voicemail. I was so relieved, but she immediately called me back. And I was like,
Like,
and so I'm like running to hide in a closet and just the kids were screaming and I was like,
uh-huh.
"Hey." So I didn't even know what to ask her. I just was like, "I heard about your studio. I'm trying to open studio. I know that like we in this particular there were licensing agreements with this training and so you would have radiuses of like there can't be a studio within this radius and we were kind of
Right.
going to be on the edge of a radius and so I was like would you be willing to work out a deal where you sell me a portion of your radius so I can open here in Berry Farms? So I just kind of am like spitting all this stuff out at her and she just stops me and goes, do you want to buy my studio? And I was like, is your studio for sale? Like I didn't know. And she goes, let's meet and let's talk. And
Wow.
I had $0 and I was like, I'm not in a position to buy a business right now. I'm just trying to start a business. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And she's like, look, we're in a really bad situation. They had a lot happening, within she and a co-owner had a lot going on in their personal lives. And she's like, let's just work something out. I care about this community. You clearly want to step into this role. Let's work something out.
Wow.
So we did. And I don't really know how it happened even to this day. There's some things on paper that we signed and suddenly I had this studio and her lease was ending within like 7 months. And so I was like, well, I'll take over the community, learn from her, be mentored, and then we'll move into our new
Wow.
space. We'll transition everybody. It's not that far, so they'll come along with us. It's going to be great, And so, of course, you have these
Mhm.
plans. And so I'm running the studio, learning the business, teaching all the time, figuring it out. Still had two little kids at the time. Well, I have four, obviously, but two that were really little that were like in tow at all times. And
And so are your kids running around with you at this point or do you have
oh yeah,
childcare?
yes, like Isley was the mascot. We have a video of her. We had the Roomba that would like
Yeah.
clean the floors. She's sitting on it, sucking her thumb with her blanket.
Oh,
So she just came with me and did everything I did. And
amazing.
yeah, it was wild. I mean, it was fun and wild and horrible at the same time. Um, so yeah, so we started working on this lease in Berry Farms and I had never done that process. A friend of a friend told me about this amazing broker and he really became my advocate. Um, I couldn't have done it without him, but this lease took over a year to just get signed. And
Wow.
I get it now at the bottom line. They're like, who are you and what are your credentials and what other businesses do you have? And
Hmm.
I was just, I was a nobody with like a big dream. And I was like, well, come see the studio I have. Like, we're thriving. It's going well. But there just wasn't enough data for them to go, yeah, we're going
Right.
to take a risk on you. We're going to let you
Right.
build out this vanilla space and sign a 5-year lease. So I remember the deal died 3 times. It just kept the deal just, they were like, I'm sorry, there are a bunch of, business executive men and, the gray suits. And I understand, but I just kept going back to the drawing board. Like, am I still supposed to do this?
Hmm.
And every time I just got to like keep pushing. And I know they got so sick of me. They got so annoyed by me. But at that point, I just felt like I was just supposed to show up with tenacity.
Yeah.
And the worst that can happen is I get exhausted and like, I don't know, like I just have to keep trying. So finally we were at a meeting, we were having lunch and everybody, like my broker was there, everybody was there. I didn't know half the stuff they were saying. I was Googling it under the table and I was
Mhm.
looking at my black pants and I realized I had spit up baby food on my pants and I'm like scraping it off, trying to act professional and just literally faking it. And I'm sure they saw that. But somehow the deal got signed that day and
Wow.
they bought in and I was like, I said, I will flip hamburgers at Sonic if I have to, but I will pay my bills every month. I promise you.
Hmm.
So I think they just got sick of me and said, fine, give it to her. And so we started build out. David and I did the build out ourselves. We have pictures of the kids helping us do, they were in there. We did the entire build out ourselves. We
Wow.
worked through the holidays. David was
How long did
sleeping.
that take?
We were pushing really hard to open quickly because our lease was going to commence within, I think, 4 months. And they just gave us like a vanilla box. I mean,
Yeah. Wow.
literally. And so we were looking at the time frame and we had to be in quick. And so we hustled, did most of it ourselves to save as much money as possible. And
Wow.
it took a little over 4 months. And so, yeah, I mean, like I said, David was sleeping the week of Christmas. He slept there. Like he would maybe sleep 1 hour and then get right back to it. We were delirious, like walking into walls, hilarious. And my best friend, in the bar studio at the time that I had met, she was a newfound friend, and she said, "I'll help you pre-sell memberships." And I said, "Great, that's awesome. Let's do it." And next door to us was a liquor store. And so we threw it out on social media. We're like, we're pre-selling memberships, best price you'll ever get. Meet us at the liquor store. And people did. They came. And it was really
What a great friend. Yeah.
great. She was a great friend. Actually, I have a couple good friends that are still in it with me today teaching. And the 3 of them really they help promote me, they help spread the word. But people showed up and I think because they originally knew the girl that trained me and there was kind of a buzz about it in town, people were buying memberships. And I was like, okay,
Wow.
good. We're going to have some money. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So we opened the doors January 2nd. And that was my big push. I was like, we're going to be open for the new year because everyone's got their little fitness resolutions.
Right.
And people just came in droves. I mean, they were showing, I could not believe it. It is not your typical business story. I mean, people they showed up. And so quickly I was adding classes. I was like, we got to have more. We did have childcare. We had a childcare room. So I was staffing that.
Wow.
Within a couple months, I was like, this is a business. This is not a ministry. This is a
Yeah.
business. And I had to wise up to a lot of things and I had to start hiring people. That's a whole other story of just how some amazing people came along my path that I was like, please come on the team. I need your help. And I could not have done it alone. It was really stressful. But we did it and we got started. And that was 9 years ago. So that was our first studio.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's your first studio. How many studios have you had total?
So including the one I bought, there's been 3.
Uh-huh.
We opened that studio and then within about 4 years, I had an idea for a second concept studio within the same area, but that was a bar studio. And then I wanted to open a yoga and bounce, which is like the trampoline fitness. It's so
Mhm.
fun and I love it. And so it's like trampoline and strength training. So I was like, I'll have 2 studios, completely different concepts. This one's doing so well. This will be a whole different demographic. And so I started working on that concept and then we opened that in spring of 2020. So it did not thrive immediately. We opened in the shutdown. So that's a whole other, I
That's
think that's
business,
where
baby.
the rubber met the road with business. To open and have success the way I did, I'm realizing is just it's not normal. That's not your typical story. And then the second studio is the one that it truly broke me. It humbled me. I feel like that's where, I got off the training wheels in business and had to really grow. Um, and it truly almost didn't make it. And that was the first time in my life I ever had. I woke up in a hot sweat, panic attacks. Like I just signed this lease on double the space as my previous studio, and all these people were depending on me and, my family's future. And that was really, really hard. And I had to come to a place of being okay to accept failure. Like, hey, as an entrepreneur, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. And if I have to shut down, that doesn't mean I did anything wrong. I mean, of course, there's things
Right.
you could have done better, but I couldn't see a pandemic coming. So I was prepared. I'd finally talked myself off that ledge of like, this doesn't equate my value. This doesn't equate my worth.
Mhm.
If we have to go down this path, there will be other opportunities. Um, but that was probably one of the most stressful seasons of my life.
So the year 2020 when COVID kind of hit, what did that whole year look like as far as like all of your businesses, and like what were you doing? Were your doors shut, and what was happening?
So the bar studio was still going strong, and those people are like, I'm coming. I'm going to work out. I'm not scared. And I was like, great,
Yeah.
I appreciate you. And I was
Uh-huh.
like, I was really trying to honor, it was a scary time. Everyone had lots of big opinions. And I really was trying to honor where people were in that space because everyone's doing the best they can. And
Right.
so I was like, look, I'm going to have options. If you want to stay home, I
Mhm.
threw up lighting in my bedroom and I started filming and I created a YouTube channel. And I was like, I literally had people come to the studio, pop their trunk. I'd put equipment in their trunk and they could sign on and do classes with us online. I was just trying to
Wow.
keep my revenue stream going. I was trying to keep memberships up.
Mhm.
So we were filming and loading classes on YouTube. And then people that wanted to come kept coming. And really the bar kept rolling great. The problem was I had just opened this other studio, Free Flow,
Mhm.
and nobody knew about it. It was brand new.
Everything was so uncertain during that time too. Nobody really knew what was going to happen with the economy, the market, jobs.
It was so stressful. And I was trying to think, how can I serve people right now? I was just hosting free classes. I even had lunchtime meditation. Like, you just want to come sit on your mat and breathe and, release your stress, or do some restorative yoga. And so I was just trying to serve the community. I was like, I have this big space. There was a lot of older clients that were really scared, of course. And so I had like socially distanced class. I was doing everything I could.
Mhm.
And I pretty quickly realized that I couldn't have two spaces. Like it was impossible. And I had 8 months left on my lease at the bar. So I worked out a deal to sublease that space. I moved the bar studio over to Free Flow, and I had a girl that was subleasing my other, and then I moved everyone to Free Flow, and we have 2 rooms in the studio. So one of the rooms became a bar studio, and the other room was the bounce and yoga, and it felt like just a scrappy way to like stay afloat. And that's what really got me through, but like scraping by. I mean, I
And
was doing it all. I was teaching all the classes. I was swabbing all the toilets.
wow.
I was there all
Oh,
the time,
wow.
all the time.
What was the time frame on when you transitioned everything over? Like what
Um,
year was that?
so I transitioned in 2020.
Okay.
Oh man, that's a little fuzzy. I transitioned during that year.
I don't I don't know why it's fuzzy.
I wasn't sleeping. And when I was sleeping, I was stressing. Um, so yeah, so I transitioned everybody in 2020. And then when we got to the end of that year, I remember because we were just bleeding cash. And my husband's like, how long are we going to let this ride? It's an investment, but at some point you have to like,
Right.
call your losses. And so I was like, let's just give it one more month. Let's let's just pray about it. Let's give it another month. If we have to do chapter 11, the sucker, we'll just go that route. And then the people came. I mean, the next month was like people showed up. I don't know what happened other than just a miracle. And And we were like, okay, we'll give it another month.
And
And we
how far into COVID is this when everything
This
started
was
kind of
like a
turning around?
year. This was at the end of 2020. And so
Okay.
the beginning of 2021, we started to see a little traction, a little.
Mm-hmm.
It was about 2 years of me just not outsourcing anything, doing it all, trying to keep expenses as low as possible. Um,
And how many employees were you having to let employees go during that time?
so I have subcontractors, they get to pick their hours, they get to pick their classes, and that made it easy on that front, of course, but I couldn't qualify for PPP. There was a lot of
Mhm.
resources that weren't available to me
Oh,
for that
wow.
reason. So that
Oh,
was
that's
a whole other thing.
hard.
And I had 30 instructors. Um, so I didn't let anyone go.
Hmm.
Um, I really, my main goal was to keep, as long as they wanted to teach. I had to streamline some classes and teach a little less as what I wanted to offer, but yeah, it was just a tricky time.
How was your marriage during that year?
You know, the thing about David and I is I feel like we are amazing in crisis together.
Hmm.
That has its pros and cons. We've had to learn how to thrive when there's not crisis, because that could be like a trauma bond. But we really link arms and we just get shit done. And David was my biggest, I'll probably cry if I talk about it. He was my biggest champion in that season. I was really alone. I was really scared. Um, I'd really gone out on a limb, and just coming out of a lawsuit and having dealt with all that financial fear. And then I felt like I put our whole family's trajectory, like future trajectory, on the line. And then I was like, I
Hmm.
screwed it up. Like, we
Yeah.
just came out of this crisis. We're really trying to turn the tides for our family and have financial freedom. And I was terrified. And
That's a lot.
he not once like shamed me. He just kept pumping courage into me and believing in me and helping me, um, holding me when I was like crying in the middle of the night. He was amazing, and he just was like, whatever you need. He really let me make the decision and the call of like, this is your baby, and I know you believe in it. And he was taking his own profits from his business and pouring it into the studio, and so yeah, I think we've really grown through the hard seasons together. We've had a lot of trials in our marriage and our life and our extended family. And I think those things have really, really brought us together. So we were in that season, we had done enough of the work and laid the foundation in our own lives that we were able to really support each other and our kids. So that was the beauty that came out of that season.
I understand that too. Like coming together in crisis is something that can definitely make you stronger and bond your family together, but it doesn't mean that it's not super hard, you know? It'd be a lot easier to not do that.
Yes, I
That's
would
not
prefer the
necessarily
easy.
the easy road.
I say this all the time in class at the end, or like even when people are just like, I can tell they're in it and they're like shaking and struggling. I'm like, you're made in the fire. You know, that's the refinement and the mental toughness that you exude in those trials and in your workout and in your life, that translates to real life. Like the stuff you do in the monotonous things.
Right.
Maybe it's just a fitness class, maybe it's a discipline, but that's the mental fortitude that translates. And so I really think that's true in relationships too.
You know, it's interesting, something that I've always thought, and this is from like, I don't know, medical school and like on even before then, is there's such this relationship between, I think, emotional grit and mental grit and physical fitness and what you put in the gym. Because I remember going through times that were extraordinarily stressful, and I would go for a run or I'd work out, I'd go to the gym. And during my workouts, I would always think, if I can get through this, I can get through anything else. And then in my daily life, I was like, if I can get through this, then I can show up to the gym. And it was like this weird thing where, like, whether or not I was like living out my day and my stress or I was in the gym, both of those things, like being able to go and get a physical release, get the endorphins from it, and know that leaving my workout, I was always going to feel more empowered, better, clear mind, a more clear mind. and just this relief. There's a relief after your workout that no matter what your stress was coming into that space and no matter how bad it was, that when you leave there, somehow it's better and somehow the weight isn't as heavy. And I just remember like during really hard times, just like working out and just thinking, I can do anything. Like I can do this workout. And if I can get through this workout, I can also get through life. It's just working out is so powerful. And so to create that space for other people and to be the ringleader of that is so special.
Well, and I think that really is what keeps me going because, entrepreneur life, it's really lonely. I mean, you create your support system. Um, and but you're in your head a lot because you're the factory, like you're the idea, you're the implementation, the lights are on and off with you. You know, there's a lot that you feel deeply about that community, and from the business front and the personal front and the branding front, and you're just kind of wearing all the hats. And the thing that keeps me going on the worst days when I have to deal with all the Lindas that are just mad about whatever in the inbox and
Always.
all the junk and the legal stuff and whatever. It really is thinking about exactly what you're saying. There is such a mind-body connection to it. And I tell this to my kids. I know at some of their ages, they're like, mom's just on her little rampage of go on a walk. But it really does. There's so much research about how it resets your brain and how much. I mean, it's insane. It is literally a low dose antidepressant. And I can honestly,
or if I would argue it's a high dose antidepressant, to be honest with you.
I try not to make wild claims, but I have walked in there, and as the teacher, I've walked in sometimes like wiping my tears in the parking lot, and I try to be vulnerable professionally with, my clients go, hey, I'm having a really hard day, but we're going to do this and we're going to feel so much better. And just to be able to like push through the mental fortitude and it really does. It's just what you said, Lindsey. It's like, if I can do this, I can do anything. And at the end of class, I'll say, okay, do you regret that? Like no one ever gets to the end.
Never.
I really regret that workout. Like
never.
Nobody's, I mean, maybe in the middle of your squats, you're saying at the end, you're so glad you did it and you feel so good. And whatever you were so worried about at the beginning, now you're like, it just doesn't feel as heavy. It doesn't feel as overwhelming. I can put it in its proper perspective,
And you've done something for yourself. You've done something for your health, your physical health, your mental health.
Yes.
You can take on all the other challenges if you have a stronger body and a stronger mind. There's so much scientific data on working out and physical exercise being equivalent to antidepressants. Obviously, there's some people's brain chemistry that needs antidepressants, but in the average person, working out is just as good, if not better, honestly. And that's real hard scientific data. And there's also a lot of research on plasticity, neuroplasticity. The more you work out, the more plastic your brain is, which is a really good thing. That means you're able to make and set down new neural pathways, which kids can do really easily. But as you get older, it's hard to do. It increases your lifespan. And even just walking.
Yeah.
Like even the most just, and so when I am struggling and having a hard time and I don't think I can put everything into my workout, I always remember that even just walking helps, and even just walking can push back Alzheimer's and push back dementia and help and so I always just think, okay, if I show up today and I do my workout, even if I do the bare minimum and even if I have a really hard time in my workout, it's still going to help me. So you don't have to be 100% yourself, even in, your workout, as long as you show up and you just do it.
That is such like, okay, I turned 40 this year. And so I'm the walking club now. I just got a weighted vest and I still love my workouts. I want to strength train. I mean, as women, we lose muscle mass so rapidly. So strength training is super important. But I am walking every day now and I've become addicted to it. I mean, it's also the time I listen to podcasts and I try to learn or get back, to Voxers with friends or whatever. But I think it's so underrated. And I remember hearing people talk about walking and I'm like, psh, if you're not running or you're not doing a HIIT workout or whatever, no, it is so effective. And just being outside in the right brain, left brain, of that is so good for you. And I think a lot of times people think if I can't have a program or go balls to the wall or whatever, that like just, I'm not even going to try. And the best workout is the workout you show up to. It's the movement that you can actually do that day. And a big premise of my studio and what I really feel like is one of the things that sets us apart is I'm a huge proponent of really understanding what you need that day. A lot
Mhm.
of fitness facilities, you walk in, they've got the WOD on the wall. We're all doing this
Yeah.
thing. We have to show up and do this thing. Well, I'm sorry. What if, you had an injury? What if you're on your
Right.
period? What if you're experiencing grief and trauma in your life? What if you didn't sleep last night because your baby was up? Like, where are those factors of humanity coming into our movement? And what do you need? Some days you need to lie on the mat and stretch and cry.
Uh-huh.
Other days you need to do, a Pilates class with like some 2-pound weights. Some days you need to sweat and jump and punch and kick and just like get it
Mhm.
all out because you got all that aggression. And so I think one of the things that the fitness industry is really missing is showing up authentic and having the authenticity
Mhm.
in that space to go, here's what I actually need today and what my body's telling me. And we're not machines, we're human beings, not human doings. And
Yeah.
we've got to be able to show up and go, what do I have today in my tank? And how can I show up authentically? So when our clients come, we have a plan, we have a class, we're always stacking in options and going, did you have knee replacement? Like maybe take this move. Like, how can
Mhm.
you honor your body and still keep moving? And I just think that's how you mitigate injury. That's how you have, longevity in your fitness, lifetime of fitness. And also how you have motivation to keep showing up and not feel defeated. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that's a
That's a
big
concept
component.
I learned from yoga.
Yeah,
Before yoga, I'd always done like really hard like combat sports, like Muay
right.
Thai and um I always thought that doing a softer workout or doing less in a day was like weak, you know?
Mhm.
Like you weren't doing what you should be doing. And then when I started doing yoga, that was the first time that my mindset started changing to being able to do gentler exercises that are still effective or like you said, doing what you need for that day, depending on what your circumstances are. And that's like the most amazing thing about the yoga mindset too, which is awesome.
And that's something I learned in yoga, playing competitive sports my whole life. Um, and to y'all, both of y'all's point, just showing up no matter what's going on in your life, even if you don't have a solution to what you're struggling or going through, just show up. Even if you can't even form a full sentence, you're showing up. And we've all been there.
Mary Catherine, we'll have to share this full story another time, but Mary Catherine has a really powerful story about how yoga became a very transformative part of rehab for her from a really bad trauma. So working out in studios and yoga studios have a very
Yes.
special place
I love
Yes.
that.
both of
Yeah.
our hearts.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some of our teachers have the same story. It's funny. I have a yoga studio. I don't teach yoga, which is pretty ironic. And that's why I fell in love with bar to begin with. Bar was never what I would have picked. I was the same as you, Lindsay. I'm like, give me the Taibo, give me like, the heavy
Mhm.
weights. What can I do? But I did bar, and the methodology that I learned under was very Pilates yoga bar based. It was the first time I'd ever connected to my body when I was moving in
Mhm.
that way. And we have a lady at the studio that does a trauma sensitive yoga, and we've held groups for, women that have lost children, women that have come
Wow.
through trauma and abuse. And I have recently in the last few years, not just in the studio, but also in my own story, realized the power of how the body keeps the score and the trauma that you hold in your body, and how talk therapy and other modalities can only go so far. There are certain things that are lodged in your body, and there's multiple modalities to help with that, but yoga is a huge component of that.
Mhm.
And I've seen it, I've witnessed it, I've experienced it. And so there's a lot more than just, having six-pack abs. It's really like how are we healthy from the inside out too.
Do you know of any other fitness studios that are kind of come at it with your mindset? Because I mean, I guess there are resources like that, but I feel like your business model and the things that you place importance on is pretty unique in your space.
Thank you. I've really actually just started I've just started realizing that in the way that I am. And I hired a business coach this year, and I'm starting to look at the future of that and what that looks like, because when I opened Free Flow, I originally set it up. I hired a branding agency, and I was like, I want to franchise. This is a great concept. I love it. It's fun. Let's do it. I don't see anything like this. Let's franchise. So,
Mm-hmm.
I trademarked. I went through the whole process, and then of course COVID, and so I got derailed, and I was swabbing
Yeah.
toilets instead of franchising.
Awesome.
But I was also getting a business degree basically during that season, so it was valuable. But I'm at a place now where I see a lot of things in the online space that are starting to talk more about this. Not so much in the brick and mortar. How can we help other people outside of this? Women that are, have body image issues, beating themselves up, just trying to look a certain way or be a certain way. And I'm like, dude, that is just not what it's about. How can
And intimidated to go to a gym too.
100%. And I'm just like, I don't care if you have on a Walmart t-shirt and, Amazon sweatpants. Come as you are.
Yeah.
And, something that's super important to me is being authentic and being unique is better than being better. And
Yeah.
I think in business, whether you're an entrepreneur and you're like, oh, I can't start that because there's other people doing that are better than me, that are smarter than me, probably, and there always will be. Or I can't start this workout because they're going to be in there that are better than me and are stronger than me and doing all the moves right. Probably.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
showing up and being authentic and being willing to go, okay, I am just going to be me. And I'm when we're in the studio, sometimes I'll tell women, like, look in the mirror. Everyone's doing this. They're sucking in. And I'm like, like, I get that we do that. I do it. I catch myself all the time. And even for a while, I was nervous about owning a studio, especially bar, because those bar babes are like 5'7" and they have legs like the size of my pinky. And that's not me. I'm like athletic, short. That's not me. And I really had to get over that stigma. I was like,
I feel the same way in yoga class. So
yeah.
I feel you.
Same way. I was like, one of these things is not like the other. But it's totally like we're human beings. And I'm just getting like really tired of that in the industry. And lots of people are breaking those myths. And I'm thankful for that in our culture. But this has become a really big passion of mine, to see like what can I do with this and with the years of experience, and then also the mental health component, especially in the last year, that's become really near and dear to my heart. We lost my brother a year ago to mental health issues, and it has been the hardest thing I've ever walked through in my life. And I've seen so many people that have come out of the woodwork just being honest and going, I really am struggling. Like, I'm not okay. But they came to class and they showed up, and they will often say, like, that alongside the other things they need to support their body and support their chemistry is truly keeping them alive. And that is probably like the biggest fueler for me, is like, if we could save one person just because they feel known and seen, or because they learned that they're okay that day. Sometimes you just need that day to be okay. And so I think it's been really cool as I've gone through my own healing journey this last year, and I'm still on it and will always be on it. I think that it's more fuel to the fire of why I want to do what I do. I feel like in a way, it's a way I can honor my brother's legacy. It's a way that I can help people that feel stuck. Not that fitness is the all in all solution, but I really believe community, and I believe vulnerability and movement are huge components, alongside lots of other resources too. So it's cool because I talked to my mentor for the first time a couple weeks ago, and it was the 1-year anniversary of my brother's death. And I was on the phone with him, and they're a very mission minded group. And my mentor was like, why do you want to start this path? And why do you want to, have a mentor? And I just told him, I said, I've really been trying to figure out what to do with this giant boulder that I've been handed to carry around for the rest of my life. And so many people start, they start all these like nonprofits and do these amazing things. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what to do with this. I've never been here before. I've never had to navigate this. And I said, I think
Do what
it's
you're good at.
really cool that today I'm talking to you, and I want to be able to take my story and the collective stories of my community and my family, and be able to help people and support into them, even if it's just holding space for someone that day. And so it feels very missional to me now. I have extra fire, I feel like, behind it. And also to model it for my kids too. And to help them know it's okay to not be okay. And what do you do? Where do you reach
Right.
out? Where do you go with that?
How did you help your kids walk through that?
It's been hell, it's to paint the small picture. Like, my brother was like the Robin Williams story, the happiest, most amazing guy, loved people, lived big. He and I were a lot alike in so many ways. We were always like, I mean, he would love anything business, anything like, what are you doing next? Planners, organization. Like, we were so similar in that. And obviously that made him the most fun uncle. And my kids just adored him. And, one of my children has had a lot of struggles as well with, in the mental health space. We saw it at a young age, and we had no handbook on how to navigate it. Between my and David's family, there's some DNA fun facts. There's in the mental health space in both of our families.
We all have them. Don't worry. We all have them.
I'm not alone. But
No.
there's days when I'm like, am I the only person that's happy right now? Like, what's happening? and that's a lot.
Yeah.
It's hard to be the person that you're like, I hear you and I see you. I don't struggle in that way. Like, I have down days, but I do not experience what you're telling me. And so there's also a level of like weariness for the person that's the support to someone who's walking through that. And that's,
Of course it is. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a very lonely path. And it's not something, it's not something that people see. You show up and you don't have a kid in a wheelchair, or, you don't have a badge on your shirt. No one knows what it took you to get there, but gosh, that's a whole other story. But it's walking my kids through it has been super hard for me for multiple reasons. Number one, I hate being sad. I'm not good at being sad. Being sad is very hard for me. I'm an Enneagram 3. I just want to be productive and love people and do some cool stuff. And I had to be okay with being sad. That was the first thing I had to do for my kids, was letting myself be sad in front of them, letting myself, lowering all the expectations I had for myself in that season, saying no to everything that wasn't an absolute necessity. That was step one. And there were times when, because they'd never seen me like that, and there were times when they were like, why are you always so grumpy? Yeah. And I had to say, this is grief. I lost someone I will never get back, and I'm never going to be okay with that. I will heal and I will be able to move forward, but I'm never going to get over this. And it's going to look different days. Some days I laugh and smile and have a good memory, and other days I'm just sobbing on the floor. And in the early stages, I had to be okay with being raw, age appropriately in front of them, but letting them see me, give myself permission to have those feelings. And that was my first step. And then, just every kid processed it so different. We got them all in therapy. I wanted them to have tools. Some kids really connected to the therapy and their therapist, and just really were able to even start to build healthy habits of just going to therapy and deal with other issues that had been lying dormant. So it's been a blessing in that way. And other kids some kids shut down and it emerged later. Other kids disassociated. Some kids really struggled in school, really struggled with friendships, had anger issues, had bigger mental health issues themselves through that season. Some had a lot of fear, nightmares. I mean, all of it. And so to anybody that's walking out grief with kids, like it's the hardest shit I've ever done.
And as the mom, you're carrying it for yourself and them.
Yeah. And that's the space that, I mean, I had an amazing support group. I had friends that literally, picked up the slack for me, and I let a lot go. My business, at that point, I had enough people in place and they rose up. Like I have a few, community managers that just literally were like, don't come for a month. We don't even want to see you.
Yeah.
And I didn't care. I was like, the business can fail. Nothing mattered in that season.
Yeah.
And so, but people that love me and knew me are like, at some point she's going to want to come back.
Yeah.
And so we'll keep it rolling for her. And I couldn't have done it without my community. I've grown in my faith in ways that I can't even put into words. And it's given me a lot of empathy and tenderness for the world in general. It's opened my eyes to a whole new dimension that I never saw before. So yeah, holding space for myself and them. Like I still feel like my nervous system often is in fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm still having to regulate. I still catch myself, like even this week, my daughter moves to college next week. We just finished the 1-year anniversary. During this last year, my nephew was born, my brother's son that he never got to meet. And so many feelings. We put my dad into a rehab facility. Like there's just been so much this last year. And so my body and my mind and my heart is still holding a lot and processing a lot. And I just try to, like, when the feelings come, I try to let them be, honor them, acknowledge them, not push them away or shove them. And then just really ask like, okay, what do you want to show me in this? Like, what do I need to see? What do I need to learn? And so it's just such a journey, and I'm trying to take it one day at a time. And there's no guidebook. Everybody processes differently. I've seen that even in my own family. So, but I will say this for my kids. I'm so proud of them. I would never have picked this for their story, but the level of growth I see in them and just the relationships that David and I have been able to build with them through this trial. You're given a choice when things come to you, because we're not in control of so many things. And you're given a choice of what you're going to do with it. And you might not know initially, but pretty quickly you get to make the decision of, how do I navigate this plate that I've been handed and this storyline that I never would have picked? How do I navigate that? And you get to decide. You still, I think when something horrible happens to you and tragedy happens, you need to know that you have authority, that you have a voice, that you have autonomy in something. You have to be, I think we were made for control. I think there's elements that we're supposed to control, because, we're made to dominate. We have that sense of autonomy. And so I think when things are out of your control, you have to go, well, what can I control?
Right.
And that is part of the healing process too.
And happiness is a choice, not that you can necessarily achieve happiness. And this is something that I've talked to a lot of people just recently. People have gone through grief. It's not that you can necessarily achieve happiness in a particular day, but pursuing happiness is a choice that you make.
Yeah.
And you do have control over making the decision to pursue happiness.
Yeah. I mean, life is like 90% disciplines. And I know that doesn't sound fun and that's not sexy, but I mean, every single thing you're proud of that you've done came out of a season of discipline, or little disciplines that added up over time. And a lot of it is mental fortitude and discipline to go, okay, like just yesterday, I was like, I have got to pursue gratefulness today, because I feel like at every turn, I want to be grumpy and annoyed and nothing's going right. Like I've got to pursue gratefulness today. And it's just like doing that workout. I mean, you put your shoes on and 99% of the time you're not feeling it. And it's not about feeling it or being inspired. If we only did things when we were inspired, I don't think nothing would get done in this world. So many amazing leaders would not have evolved to where they are. And so I think you're right. It's a choice.
And behind businesses is not a happy person that everything goes easy for and that everything was handed to them and they're super lucky. I think this is sometimes the public's concept of people who own businesses or really do anything great in their life, is that things went right for them and they're super lucky and they must have had all the resources in the world. But that's just not the case. Those are usually the people who are going through the most struggles, are, put under a lot of pressure, have a lot happening, and life doesn't slow down for them either. Grief doesn't stop. Like, the hardships of life don't stop just because you're running a business. You just have a lot more weight on your shoulders. I think you have a very special gift of a balance between just thinking about, as a business owner, what you share personally on Instagram, like for people to see. It is such a special balance of being open and being vulnerable, but not being somebody who, when you're on social media and you see somebody setting up a camera and crying, and it just looks so fake and so disgusting. And it's just like, I'm so morally opposed to that. But you have this special ability to be open and vulnerable to your community, even, on social media, but it's still being real. And you can tell it's from a place that you want to help people and serve people. I think it's so powerful because there's a lot of that out there that's not real. And I also think you don't overshare and you don't overdo it. It's always very tactful. And it's always somehow, even when you're super raw, it's still uplifting in a way, because I think it makes people realize that they're not alone. And I think that's really powerful and something that you do really well.
Thank you for saying that. Social media is an awkward space, and being teenagers is really fun because they're going to make fun of everything you put on social media. That's been a whole new chapter for me. Whatever I do, they're like,
Amazing.
"Oh my gosh, mom." They're always giving me the cringe factor of whatever I did. But I agree with you there. I see a lot, whether it's politics or emotions or personal stories. Can we just please
Right.
dial it back? Everyone doesn't want to know every little feeling you have, even in the space of grief. I've seen people that have gone through grief, and I remember before I experienced this, people would post all the time. Every time they were having a bad day, every time they were having a memory, every
Yep.
time they were having something. And I remember even before I experienced it, it's terrible. I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, but I thought, aren't they over that yet? And
Yeah.
now I'm like, oh, like you never get over it. But I'm also realizing not everyone has capacity to handle that. Just like
Yeah.
we don't have
That's true.
capacity to handle all the trauma in the world, all the trauma. Like, dude, I'm doing good to handle what's in my own household most of the time. And then my friend
Yeah.
circle right outside of that. Like, and then my community, like it's enough. And sometimes I think just the amount of information coming at us, if you're an empath at all, it is completely overwhelming. And so I think people have to be careful in the space we've been given. It's a tool, it's a resource. I love the
Mhm.
connections I've been able to make on social media. And I love the connections we've made to people for my business, and personally. But I also think you have to steward it and you have to use it
Mhm.
wisely. And it's not a dumping ground. Some people I just want to be like, go get a therapist, please. It
Right.
was such a better space for you.
Right.
And the other thing too, and one of the things my therapist told me that's really stuck with me, and this applies to so many areas of life, is she said, go where the life is. And
Mhm.
it's a simple statement that became so useful in so many situations. But whether you're posting on social media, you're trying to decide about a friend group, trying to decide about business, go where the life is. Like, kind of back to what we said at the beginning, what fires you up? Where's your passion? But also, what is life giving? Not just
Mhm.
about you, but if you have a business or just are a person, you should have a service-based heart where you care about other people more than you care about yourself. Of course, you take care of yourself. Of course, you do the work you need to do. But in using that space, view it as as a tool to serve others better, because the places you need to take care of yourself are not in the public eye.
Right.
It's very private. It's with people that are safe. Um, it's going to be work that's done in secret. It's going to be work that's done quietly. And so I'm very leery of any time I see someone out there that's just putting it all out there.
Yeah.
because honestly, it just screams unhealth to me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
there are so many resources available to you that are better than this.
It shows that you're doing the work. You personally, anything that you put out there, it's very obvious that there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And that is not your space where you're going for feedback or for help, but it's more of just to show other people what real life is, and how you're navigating it. And I think that's huge. But yeah, I mean, therapists are so essential to life. Like there are moments you may need them all the time, or you may need them for a crisis. But it's so important to find somebody who can help you navigate your mental health and help give you goals and help you make decisions when maybe everything is so cloudy that you can't do it for yourself.
And that's the biggest thing. I've realized how many people still have stigmas about it, especially in certain religious circles. And I think the thing you've got to understand is a therapist is not there to play God and tell you exactly what to do. I've gotten very little
No.
advice from my therapist. They're
Right.
really there. It's mostly a sounding board for your own mind
Mhm.
to sit and have uninterrupted time
Mhm.
when no one's going to bother you, no one's going to ask for a snack, no, the phone's not going to ring, there's not going to be a business crisis, and you can literally
Right.
sit there and go, what am I actually feeling? Like, how can I
Mhm.
process this? And oftentimes, man, it comes to you on your own, just getting it out and talking through it with someone. And I think that's one of the true gifts of therapy that's overlooked, is just dedicating that time for yourself and actually going, what's inside,
Yeah.
and yes, having someone you trust that is sound and good at what they do is super important. But I would just encourage anyone. I know people that still are like, oh, I don't need that, I have good friends. Well, your friends shouldn't be your dumping ground for all of those things
No.
either. If they
No.
are, they're probably not going to be a friend for long. They're going to run.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like a non-negotiable appointment you make with yourself. And I
Mhm.
think it's the same for fitness. Yeah, I tell people, if they're always, people will tell me, and we run like 12 classes a day. And sometimes people go, "Oh, there's really not a good time for me." And I'm like, it's on your calendar. Like, this is an appointment.
Mhm.
You make it to all your other appointments, you fulfill your other commitments. It's an appointment with yourself. Whether it's therapy, whether it's a date night, whether it's, a hang out with a friend or movement, it's got to be on your calendar. And that's just like you said, it's that accountability of like, okay, I'm doing that thing, and
Yeah.
um, you know, the world needs us. We need to be showing up healthy for each other. It's not just about us. It's about our spouses, it's about our kids, it's about our nieces and nephews and the future generations. And so I just think, like, take that seriously. If each person really took their own personal health seriously, the world would be a much better place.
Something that I've done every new city that I've moved to, even before I moved there, even when I'm just like preparing to move, I find a gym. And I find a gym that I can go to that's smaller, where I know that I can go to like group classes and I'll meet people and they'll become my community. And that has helped me through a lot of times when I would have been completely alone in a new place. Um, and so I think businesses like yours, like you're right, it's like it's a business, but it really is always a ministry too, because you're providing a space for people who are able to just go and sign up for a class and immediately have access to a community. And that is so powerful. And I've had, over the years, a lot of friends and roommates and people who are going through really hard times, that seems like, maybe they wouldn't get to the other side of. And I always encourage them, like, go to the gym and start taking a class. Start taking a class at the gym, go every single day. And it it changes people's ability to cope with life.
It really does.
Um,
I spent years working out at home because that was really my only option. Like, I didn't have money to join I mean,
mhm,
I did the rec center for a while. Like, I went to the Y and I did do that. And so there are some less expensive options too for people, but I was just working out at home, and I was just working out to sweat and move my body. It was great. 10 points for me. That's awesome. I didn't realize, though, the difference when you step into a class setting, the
mhm,
accountability, the challenge. I was like challenging myself in ways I never would have um if I was just at home. And also, I didn't realize that I needed almost daily. It's so different to it's so different to have this daily thing. Like, it's great. Okay, you go to church or you're in a community group, or, you have a club you're a part of and you see those people once a week. That's great. You're not really doing life with those people. And so
Mm-hmm.
something about the 4 or 5 times a week, we see these
Mm-hmm.
people. I mean, our community, their best friends are in the community and they've met them there.
Mm-hmm.
I love seeing Instagram stories. Like, I see people, I'm like, oh, they're traveling together now. They're besties. And then there's this little group of mamas that forms. They all had babies around the same time, or they're all like young marrieds, and they have their own little group and they do all this stuff together. And one of them has been through, she had arm cancer and has had so many surgeries. And another one, has some stuff going on in her marriage that she's walking through. And like another one struggling with infertility. And like, there's different things happening within that group, and they have become their people. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing anything. I'm just like opening the doors, leading a class. They made their own connections. They go to coffee, they have lunch, they have play dates. And it just blesses me so much to see people
Yeah.
find their people, because lots of people are transplants, lots of people are moving to a city and they don't know anyone. And sure, you join a book club or you go to church once a week. You're not going to really find your people that way. That's a
Yeah.
long path. But just what you're saying, go to a new city, or you're just lonely. People ask me all the time, like, how do you find your people? I'm like, you have to really try. You have to be intentional.
Yes.
Especially as adults, relationships just don't happen. It's not like you're in, elementary
Right.
school and it's just whoever you're on the playground with. But to that point, they see them every day. Our kids see their friends every
Mm-hmm.
day, and it fosters their relationship. And so there's something about that consistent community that if you are feeling lonely, if you feel like you don't have your tribe, you don't have your people, that is probably the number one place to start, because you're sweating alongside them. You have common interest, and it's naturally going to happen. I
Right.
have never seen it not happen. Like, you find your people. So,
And it's a built-in time that's in your schedule
yes.
where you're going to show up and you're going to see them. So you never have to make time for it. You never have to say like, oh, we'll wait until our schedules are perfect. It's such a great way to know that on your worst days and on your best days, you're going to show up to the gym for that class, and that you're going to be surrounded by people who may also be having their best, their worst day, but you're all in it together for a common goal. And it's so special. My biggest advice to anybody, and I mean, you own the business, so I know it's your mission in life, but it's just find a group of adults that works out together and join them. Even if you don't have the resources and the funds, then go on hot girl walks together, find a friend, go outside, go on a walk. The mental health from it, the mental health benefits are just, there's no amount of money that you could put into anything that gives you such a return on your investment. Like the investment in physical exercises, a gym community. And, there is a lot that you do too, because you have to create a space that fosters that. I've been to gyms that have really bad vibes and aren't run well, and they have mean girl vibes. So I think it's really special that you've created a space that lets, you set the tone. The tone comes from the top down in a business. And for better or for worse, on your good days, your bad days, even walking through grief, you've created a space that allows people to come as they are and walk through life, but have community, and then also impact their mental health and their physical health in this huge, huge way.
I really have to give a shout out to my team. I think part of being a leader is bringing other leaders alongside of you. And our whole culture from the top down is no drama. We've got each other's backs, and we've been through highs and lows. They've certainly been through it with me. And, there's been seasons when we had to do a house cleaning and some, if it's not going to serve our community, and if it's not going to foster our principles of what we believe in, like, we don't want it, because we want it to be safe. You should feel safe when you come, and for some people, it's the only safe place they have. I've had women that are in abusive relationships that have finally told us, and they wouldn't have told anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, this hour here was the only place I felt really safe. Wow. And I mean, that gives me chills to think about. But yeah, if you have those mean snobby girl vibes, or you're just not open yourself, or the leadership has squabbles and issues going on internally, you can't provide that space. And so it's much more than just working out and sweating. It's much more than having a sculpted physique. It really is missional, because the people, just what you're saying, Lindsey, the people that work out and they're already in the top tier. They're the people that make their beds every morning. They're the people that, are, have a mission driven mindset. Because it's those 1 to 2 degree shifts in life that really set your course. It's not, people often think, I couldn't do that thing, it's too big, or I'm too busy, or whatever. But if you think about a ship heading in a direction, it's not this like, oh, I had to turn around and go a totally different direction or reorient my entire life. It's like, no, you're heading in this direction. And if you make a 2 degree shift over time, you end up in a totally different place than you would have been if you just like keep going in the path you're going. I think, you just, to what your point, the people that are moving their bodies and taking care of themselves, there's a much bigger picture going on, because they value themselves, they value their service to the community, and they're willing to put in the work, and they're willing to do a hard thing.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest traits that I hope to pass on to my kids is resilience. I'm seeing more and more just a lack of resilience, to fall, to struggle, give up. Everybody wants to give up, especially in this next generation I'm seeing coming along. It's like they have it easy. They're trust fund babies. They got a lot of things going for them, but they're lacking in resilience. If something is hard or something doesn't come naturally, they don't know how to dust themselves off and stand back up. And that's not fake bootstrapping. I'm talking about doing the work you need to do to carry on. Right. And so again, back to the movement, when you have the level of resilience that's like, I can stay in this for 4 more seconds before my legs fall off. That resilience is something you're training yourself in. And so I just think that it's so important, and you'll find those people that are doing it alongside of you. They will become your people.
What does the next 5 years look like for you, and what is your vision for that? I know we talked about your business, mental health, your family. So what is your vision for all of the things?
Yeah, so I love a good plan. I do feel like you have to hold your plans loosely, but still head in that direction. Part of that was hiring a coach, which I just did. I've done it, solo all this time. I've learned a lot of things. I'm proud of myself for getting here, but I also know there's a lot of people ahead of me and smarter and wiser than me that have resources available to me. And I'm really excited about that, because I feel like they're going to help me navigate the next 5 years and figure out, because I have ideas, which I never lack for, but I want to make sure I'm going in the right direction at the right pace and in the right order. I felt a lot of things stirring in me for change. This is probably the longest that I've been doing the same thing consistently. And I think it's been a good season for me. There's something about faithfulness in the same direction. You really learn things when you lock in, and you're not just looking for the next shiny thing, but you stay faithful in that realm that you're in. You really learn things. So I kind of feel like I've been in a quiet school of learning for the last few years, but things have obviously been shaken up in the last few years as well. And so I'm ready for the next thing. Hired a business coach for that reason. I'm basically going back to school now because I'm so bored. I have nothing else to do. I'm having all these trainings and I have all of these things, and I'm having to get up and be a morning person like right now, which I actually am not a morning person. But I'm really having to reorient my life because I have time. It's just how I use it. And so I'm not going to share everything that's in my hopper, but I do have visions of expanding. I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like. Like I said, originally I was thinking more studios. There's other opportunities in the fitness realm that I'm exploring. And then honestly, I love what y'all are doing. Like my mentor was like, what about a podcast? And of course, your first thought is there's a million podcasts, but then it's like, well, there's not a million yous, and just what y'all are doing is unique, and you're encouraging women in the space that you're in. And I just don't think there's ever going to be too much of that. Everyone will find their home base. And so I would love to hear from other people and learn from other people as well. So that's something that I'm intrigued by. And, I will say, lots of people are like, how do you juggle it? How do you balance it? Like 4 kids, some days truly feels like a million, y'all. Like sometimes Sometimes I think I probably should have had a child. Like, this is insanity. And I'm like, look, I am high functioning and I'm a ninja and I can handle some things, but this is about to take me under. I mean, just this week with them starting back school, it's like everything, like one kid had a, expander that fell out. The other one's shoes were too small. The other one, didn't have the right colored notebooks. I mean, all I'm doing is like, trying to like handle it. So, I'm not bored, but I really do want to figure out what to do with my time and how to be the most effective with it. So I'm thankful to have some leadership in that, but I will say I don't believe in balance. I don't think balance is achievable. I think it's a myth and a mirage. This is my personal belief. I really try to look at life in seasons, and every season has different needs. When you have a newborn, everything kind of stops. It's about that baby and it's about you healing, and it's very unbalanced. I mean, you're not working, your house is a bomb, you probably haven't showered in a week. It's the most unbalanced. It's also the right thing. It's like the right thing. You have a goal. Your goal is to get this little one to thrive and to become their own person. And so I think for me, it's become really helpful for me to look at life in terms of seasons and where I am in this season. And like when we were opening the studio, David and I were there almost 24/7. That's not sustainable, and that's not forever, and that's not balanced. But it was the right thing to do. That was a season. We were building something and we poured everything we had into that season. And when that chapter closed, we had to have a time to recoup and to pour into other things that needed our attention. So some seasons are more kid heavy, where I'm needed at home more. Some seasons are going to be where I have more margin. I mean, the kids just went back to school. And then once Gabriel gets to college next week, my daytimes will be a lot more free for work, and I will be uninterrupted as much. And so I try to really take my summers and be like, I'm super available to my kids. When my kids get home from school, I try to be super available to them and not work. And so I think that for me, if I think about the next few years, I'm really trying to look at my season and go, what building blocks can I start building in my business and in my future plans that are sustainable for me now? But when the season changes, I've already created some things that I can build on. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do right now. I can't do all the things I want to do right now because it's not appropriate for still having little kids, but it will be one day. So I'm trying to do what I can do now.
I like that. Seasons.
Yeah.
That is so true.
Yeah, it resonates.
Yeah. Well, we are so excited to see the next 5 years for you because you are amazing, and we just are excited to see all the amazing things you're going to do and the people you're going to touch. So we can't wait to see it. What is one piece of advice that you want to share with other women? I know there's so many, about either starting a business and or a family.
Ugh. Loaded. I probably should have really thought that one through before.
Or whatever's just on your heart right now.
Yeah.
Like whatever the one thing is you feel like you need to pass along to
Yeah,
women.
what do you want to share?
You're never ready and you're never qualified. And nobody is. And I think whether it's starting a family or getting married or going to college or a new career, or a business, you just do it scared. You're not going to know everything. You're not going to be prepared. You have no idea. And if you knew what was going to come down the pike, you probably wouldn't do it, and yet you would still do it. And so I think I've really, really, like I said earlier, I've had to learn how to have a lot of grace for myself and for other people. Something my therapist said too, which was, she said, there was this little grandma that was kind of a mentor to her. And she said, whenever she'd be having a hard day, imagine this like 85-year-old woman. She said she would really pat her shoulder and just go, there now. You're doing a good job. It's hard being you. Like just kind of comforting herself. It was just the cutest little visual. And I thought, we are so hard on ourselves. And we have all these expectations and all these voices in our heads saying everyone's doing it better. Everyone's winning at everything. And I'm not, and I get stuck in that mindset too. And the reality is I'm sitting here on this podcast with you, and maybe some people are like, oh man, but you know what? My closet's a bomb. I've got a stack of bills that need to be paid. I've got one kid that I feel like I haven't really connected with this week, so I'm going to try to do that this afternoon.
Oh.
Nobody has it all together at the same
Mhm.
time. Nobody does. And so I think just like shifting your mindset to just remember we're all human and we're all doing the best we can, and just shove the stinking thinking out. Like, those are lies, and you have what it takes. You have what it takes to do what you're called to do, and you're best suited to serve the person you once were, most likely, the voice that you needed to hear back then. And so if you're searching for that thing, or like, what do I do? What's my calling? I don't even know what my niche is. Like, what have you needed the most in your life that you wish someone had said to you, or someone had come along and helped show you? That's probably who you're best suited to serve. And that's probably going to be your greatest area of expertise, because you've lived it and you felt it and you know what it's like. And so, I think that just being willing to not be the expert and to not know it all, and just start somewhere, start making some little steps, and collaborate. Talk to people that are smarter than you. We live outside of Nashville, and this is the world of entrepreneurs, and I have talked to so many people and made so many connections and picked so many brains, and I have learned a lot just by observing and talking to people around me. So there are people available to you that would really spur you on in what you're called to do.
This has been awesome. Thank you for taking the time to sit down and do this. I know you're busy. I know it's hard to find the time out of your day, especially when you have kids to, shuffle around in your business. But I just want to thank you for being such a light in your community. I know that the service and your business and the community that you provide is just something that is not replaceable. So it's just so special. And I think people like you are doing the most.
I'm humbled, and I'm grateful that y'all would even have me on, and same to you guys, just even creating this space for women to be encouraged and to share, highs and lows, and just keep doing what you're doing, because it's so needed. So thank you for this opportunity.
You have been listening to Ladies Who Lead podcast, hosted by Dr. Lindsey Tavakolian and Mary Catherine Thampi. Please rate and review this podcast wherever you are listening. You can stay connected with us between episodes by following us on Instagram at Ladies Who Lead Podcast, where we share exclusive content and updates on future episodes. Until next time, we thank you for listening.